Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Arabhatha nikhamatha yunjatha buddha sasane donatamacchuno senang nalagarang vakunjaro. The Venerable Bhantes and friends in Dhamma. It's nice to be back here again. Today, when you're not assigned a topic, it's a little hard to think what to talk about. But I started with a Pali stanza from, I think it's from Dhammapada. It's a collection of Buddha's teaching. It says, begin your journey, keep moving on the path, and destroy all the defilements, as a strong elephant would go to a pond of lotus and just destroy the pond. So Buddha used this metaphor to explain, be strong to fight against these klesas. And when you talk about Buddha's teaching, we try to go back and find some original teachings in the textbook, mainly in Pali textbooks. And I have some friends, they did not complain, but they found themselves lost in the teachings, because we have huge amount of textbooks, and if you are new to the Buddha's teaching, then you would be wondering, I don't know where to start. And there are sometimes those friends who read about the sutta and they try to make sense what these teachings mean. It's hard for them because they cannot relate which part of the teaching they're reading in those textbook. So I thought to just make like a nice list of those teachings. So whenever you are reading the Buddha's suttas and trying to learn about the original words, this might help you to track what part of teaching you're reading. Before we get there, I thought to mention a few things about, our confidence, our conviction to the teaching. Belief is an interesting idea from religious point of view and also from psychological point of view. For a long time, I am a student in psychology, so I have learned that, and I see that for a long time the popular idea from behavior theory, they always emphasized on the role of behavior in our life. For until 1960s, 70s, mind was not part of psychology. Even in other schools they were, but in behavioral therapy, behavior theory, they thought it just, your behavior is observable, so you look at that behavior, that can help you to predict what comes as the result. Not until cognitive therapy, cognitive theory comes out, and they started looking into what happens to some of our thinking. And there's a relationship between your stimulus and response, but everybody is not responding to your stimulus, environmental cue, or human interaction. We don't respond to everything in the same way. So we are different. So what happens in between that S, the stimulus, and R, the response? There's something happening in between which is unique to each individual. And that's where this cognitive part comes in, and that's where I find Buddha's teaching applicable. So in that cognition, one thing is that belief. And we thought belief is just matter of our thought process. It doesn't do much. It has only subjective application. But now neuroscience, they have found the impact of placebo effect. If you were taking some kind of medication which does not have the ingredient of that medicine, it still can change some of the parts of your brain. And this is true about pain, right? If you were to take two individuals and give them one person actual medicine which has pain killing effect, and the other person just takes a sugar pill, you will find some impact of sugar pill without actual ingredients of painkiller or morphine. They still report less pain in whatever ailment you're trying to measure. So they found in brain we have certain chemicals which works based on your belief. So when you believe something works, it can actually change your brain. So knowing that some of these teachings, Buddha's teachings, knowing that this path leads to better life, less suffering, I'm trying to connect with your conviction, your belief in that path really matters. And when you have that belief, it will produce some good results. Now, in Pali text, if you look at all those suttas, there are about 37 factors. Now I'm going to make those lists. I know it will be a lot, but I want to talk about each category later when I come back, and we can elaborate on each of them. So in Pali we call Bodhipakkhiya Dhamma. So there are 37 factors that is required to be enlightened if you are in that path. And the very first category is 4 foundations of mindfulness. So that's 4. So I'll make the list. There are 3 list of 4s, and 2 list of 5, and 1 list of 7, and 1 list of 8. That all together is 37. Now some of them repeats, and the first one is 4 foundation of mindfulness. Anytime you take a teaching of the Buddha, you might hear something related to satipatthana, which means cultivation of your mind. And in meditation, we try to cultivate our mind, because mind does not stop unless you died. Even you die, according to, if you believe in rebirth, mind still continues moving from one thought to another. So this constant changing mind needs some training. And one way Buddha gave us this training tool is not external. You don't need mantra, you don't need any kind of beats or equipment to train your mind. Buddha directed to ourselves. Look at yourself. In your body, what do you have? And 2 things is very obvious. One, we have this very active mind, and the other thing is this physical body, which keeps changing every second, every millisecond. So these 2 objects are the foundation of mindfulness. And when you look at these 2, it's not just to mind and body, but there are 2 other additional parts. In your mind, you have thoughts. So mind is always engaged with some kind of thought. You will never find your mind empty from thought. It's always some thought is present. That's the explanation of mind in Abhidhamma teaching. So ekuppada, ekanirodha, ekalambana. Anytime you have this consciousness arising, there presents a thought. And anytime this consciousness ceases, the thought ceases. So it cannot separate. It cannot separate from the presence of thought. And those thoughts could be positive, happy, pleasure thoughts. Sometimes it could be painful, and sometimes we have neutral feelings, neutral thoughts. So Buddha advised, when you have your mind and body, when you try to meditate, use these as your object. So one, you can use your body as an object, and that's where this practicing satipatthana or mindfulness meditation requires some level of awareness of your body. And there are many ways you can do. Just like I use this analogy of strength. You go to the gym, you work out, you build your muscles. Now once you build that muscles, I don't think you would use that strength only to lift 50 pounds and 100 pounds in the gym. That strength can be applied anytime you need to lift a heavy object. Is that true to you guys? So you build your strength and you apply that strength to almost everything you do. So, but you need to go to some kind of training, right? You need to either work out at your home or go to the gym, have a trainer. Some training is required. And same thing applies to your mind. Maybe a little more subtle, but without training, you try to lift 100 pounds, you might just spin your joint or just injure your muscles. Same with your mind. If you did not train your mind enough and you try to take heavy task, for example, you have to go through a major crisis in your life, you're more likely to go on depression because your mind is not trained to handle those strong experience. Or you were to go through some traumatic experience, then your mind cannot handle it, then you just crash, and again you might have some mental suffering. So same thing applies. Just like you're training your mind, training your body, you train your mind so you can lift any kind of emotional burden. So that's the first part, training your being able to pay attention to your body, knowing the postures, and maybe just focusing on that. That comes from just like going to the gym. You work out, you build your muscles, and maybe 10 to 15 minutes of sitting meditation builds that mental strength, and you can apply to many situations. And your posture is present all the time, and you can meditate in any posture you like. Just you have to make sure that you don't fall asleep if you're lying down, because that's very easy to fall asleep. It's a good outcome. If you fall asleep after meditating 10 minutes, you don't need medication for insomnia. That's a good treatment. You got your sleep back. But if you're standing, while you're standing, can you pay attention to your body weight, the posture? And when you're walking, you cannot do slow walk, just like when you do walking meditation. Perhaps you just pay attention to your right and left. So you're moving your right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. That attention builds just like you're working out in gym. So body posture, there's a lot, but I'm just trying to make it concise. Body posture could be one object for meditation. And the second foundation could be pain. Now you experience pleasure. And the human nature is we all like to experience pleasure and we hate experiencing pain. That's what Buddha said. Sukha kama dukkha patikula. That's human nature in any part of the world. We don't need the Buddha to explain that. We are still experiencing that. So when we have that, the problem with that willing to experience pleasure and not willing to experience pain is the problem. Because those two experiences are inevitable. It comes and goes. What happens, what makes it hard is you cling on to one and not let go of the other one. In ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, they have this metaphor of a sushi bar. When you go to a sushi bar, there's a list of different types of sushi passing by, and you're standing in front of the sushi, and the chef, he prepares or she prepares all those dishes, and you're standing, you're looking at those sushi. Sometimes some of the sushis are very appealing. You want to just eat them all. Some of them don't look appealing, you just disgust it. Some of them look okay. And your job is just like the chef, he doesn't care much. Your job is to stand there and let it come and let it go. Let it come and let it go, not to cling. So that's what you do with your feelings, pain, pleasure, or neutral. If you learn to experience it, not to avoid. Avoiding never works, because avoiding makes it harder when it comes back again. So if you can just experience them, at least when you practice meditation, you feel pain. And people complained when I did classes, oh Bhante, I used to be a monk, so they called, Bhante, if I try to practice meditation, my back hurts and I cannot focus. Actually, that was your focus. You're supposed to pay attention to your pain so you don't give up. Or some people come and tell, I used to meditate very well. I used to see these lights, bright light expanding, and I loved it. But now I don't see that anymore, so I don't meditate anymore. So they did not experience the pleasure they were expecting. Now they give up. That's what happens when you have early expectation of mindfulness. If you have still openness, you're okay with whatever comes, that helps to continue your practice. That's mind and body and feeling. Same with mind. Our mind constantly change. And when you sit and meditate, some people complain, but every time I try to sit and meditate, I fall asleep. So I cannot meditate. Now in Pali, we have 5 hindrances. And one of them is the sleepiness. They call thina middha, sloth and torpor. When you try to sit down and do something that's not everyday activity, just like sitting and meditating, sleepiness, laziness is one type of hindrance. You're supposed to look at those hindrances and not to get affected. If you got affected, that means the hindrance was successful. Your job is to counter back, and when you're sleepy, you might want to change your posture. Start walking for a few minutes, coming back and sit. So that's one. There are other types of thoughts that can come and affect your meditation. So that learning to face those thoughts and not being affected is practicing Chitta Anupassana. And Dhamma Anupassana is the content of those thoughts. I like these thoughts, so I want to enjoy. Just like I used to see this bright light in my meditation, I love that. That would be wrong practice of meditation. Your job is to, can you remain equanimous? Can you remain like another analogy is, there's a duck and the wave of ocean. Like the wave is constantly moving, the water is constantly moving underneath, but the duck seems to be calm and quiet. So can you be that duck in these waves of thoughts? So that could be another way to practice these 4 foundations of mindfulness. And when you try to meditate, one thing becomes hard is we are creature of habits. We have different habits. We like certain things, we dislike certain other activities. So Buddha gave this very strong, very important tool we call energy. And energy should be applied in 4 places. Anupannanang akusalanang dhammanang anupadaya. Now anytime you try to go in this path of Dhamma, there are dangers, there are obstacles, there are, we call, unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome behaviors. Now anytime you go on that path, can you put some effort not to have behaviors or problems that did not exist before? So that's the first effort. You're going to put some effort not to develop unwholesome thoughts that did not exist. And the second effort is uppannanang akusalanang dhammanang bhiyo bhavaya. You might have some bad practices. You might have predisposition. When I meditate, I should sit in the middle of the hall. When I meditate, I have to do all my rituals. So if you have early some of those wrong practices, put some effort to set aside those bad or unwholesome thoughts. Can you put some effort to remove that? So that's the second effort. And third effort is anuppannanang kusalanang dhammanang upadaya. Can you make some effort to cultivate, to develop some of your new wholesome behaviors and thoughts? Now let's say you are living fine and you never needed to meditate. But if you learn that this practice, going in this path, helps you, can you put some effort to increase those thoughts and increase those mind free from hatred and delusion? And that would be generating or producing more wholesome thought. You put effort to generate wholesome thoughts. And the fourth one is uppannanang kusalanang dhammananang biyo bhavaya. Can you put some effort to continue growing in that wholesome thoughts? So those are 4 types of effort that Buddha identified. And when you engage in those 4 efforts, it makes it easier to continue in path. And that's where the third category of 4 comes in. And that is really important. Chanda, Chitta, Virya, Vimamsa. Now, Chanda is, if you think this teaching of Buddha works for you, you must have some willingness to try and experiment. Buddha, to me, when I read about all these neuroscience and different therapy, to me, Buddha was a great experimenter. He always experiments. He never asked to buy into his teaching just because he thought that was right. And I'll tell you one quick story. One time, this young man, he wanted to see if Buddha was actual the Buddha. He had doubt. He was not happy about all the rumors, but he wanted to experiment. And in script, Buddha is defined as he had 32 superhuman qualities. Now, when I say superhuman, it's uncommon. I would say not superhuman, I'll call it uncommon qualities in Buddha's physical body. And they used to learn those qualities. So the scholars, this young man was a scholar, they used to learn about all these qualities in their script. And he wanted to test it. And he came to Buddha and asked, can I test if you are actual Buddha? Can you imagine doing that to any other teachers? Like, can I test if you are actual saint? If you are a true saint, you should be okay. Okay, yeah, ask me whatever you want. If you're not, then you have like, oh, we don't ask that question. But Buddha was pretty open. What he said, if you have doubt and if your investigation helps your doubt to remove, by all means. And Buddha let him stay in temple for 6 months. And this guy was observing Buddha day and night. All the activities, how he walks, how he eats, how he sleeps, how he talks. So he was inspecting like day and night following the Buddha. He managed to find 30 qualities of the Buddha. But there were 2 qualities he cannot just observe without permission. So other qualities he saw and he checked. He had a 32 list and he checked all 30 and 2 were not checked. And he went back to Buddha again. Bhante, I found 30 qualities in you. You almost passed, but you have 2 that I cannot verify without your permission. And those 2, one of them is that according to script, I interpret a little differently, but the script says Buddha had very broad tongue that he can cover his face. He has very wide tongue. Now Buddha won't do that all the time. So he had to ask, can you show me that? And the second one was secret genitals. So that's another Buddha's quality. You cannot see that without permission. And he asked. So the point is, Buddha allowed to see that man all those qualities just to remove his doubt. So Buddha is very experimental guy. And he cleared his doubt and he was happy with his experiment and he went back. And of course, I'm assuming he continued following the Buddha's teaching. And in many occasions, if you read the story and the history of the Buddha, you will find he would not tell anybody you have to follow because I know it's so. He always asks, Ehi passika opanayika, come and see, try it to yourself. If this doesn't work to reduce your suffering, maybe you need to find different path. But if you're right, if you're human, you go through certain physical and psychological suffering. And if you follow this path correctly, it will lead you to right direction. But Buddha is never a magician or savior. He is the director. He was a teacher. He showed you the path. You cannot go to that destination without making your own journey. Just like if you ask me how to go to Riverside, I will tell you the direction, get on, I think the Vermont, keep driving until you hit I-10 freeway, take, I don't know, left or right. You need to head east and keep driving about 50-55 miles and you will get there. Now, my explanation of the direction is not the end of journey. It's just the direction. And you have to go on that route if you want to reach that destination. It's the same with the teaching of Buddha. He gave the path. It's up to us whether to practice or not. And that requires that willingness to practice. That's called a power of mind. Therefore, power of mind is this willingness to practice. And virya, the 4 effort that we just talked. And putting effort to remove unwholesome thoughts and cultivate wholesome thoughts. Improve wholesome thoughts and not allowing unwholesome thoughts to come. And that's virya. And chitta is cultivation of mind. And it comes back to once you have willingness, once you have effort, now you have to train your mind. Because knowledge is one part of teaching. Practice comes, the cultivation of mind comes with practice. Just like, wisdom and knowledge. We can be scholar of many things, but you might not have wisdom, insight in that teaching. It's a famous joke about this guy. He was on a voyage. He had multiple PhDs. He's a doctorate in multiple studies. And there was a guy, middle-aged man working in this ship. And this young man with triple PhD talked to this young man, have you ever learned about astrology? And the sailor, he has no clue about all this science, and said, I never heard that, I don't know what is it. And the young man says, oh, you wasted quarter of your life, you should have learned that. And he talks about, the sailor went by, and after a few minutes, again, the scholar, the young man, caught this sailor and asked, have you ever learned about physics? And the sailor has no clue what physics is. And he just said, I have no clue. And the scholar says, you wasted half of your life. You should have learned some physics. It's about the science of earth. And again, he came back, the sailor, and the young man says, have you studied geography? And the sailor has no clue about geography. The scholar says, you wasted 3/4 of your life. Your life is like almost useless. And suddenly there's a panic going on in the ship, because the ship hit a kind of rock and it was sinking now. And now this time it's the sailor's turn. He ran to the scholar and he asked, do you know swimmingology? And the scholar was, what is that? Oh, it's the science of swimming. If you don't know swimming, you wasted your whole life because the ship is sinking. So the idea is that knowing all these ideas is knowledge. We need it. That's the direction. That's a path. But you also need to know the practice. Putting into practice. That's where chitta is, cultivating this knowledge into practice. And the last part of this power of mind is vimamsa, in ability to analyze your own mind and also Dhamma. So vimamsa is very powerful tool when you learn Dhamma, and it is almost like one-legged or one-eyed person if you only have knowledge. If you don't practice, you could be a great scholar of no use, because you know so much but you cannot put into practice, just like the scholar in the ship. And that's 4 chanda, virya, chitta, vimamsa: willingness, effort, mind, and skill of analysis. Those are 3 categories of 4. And there are 2 categories of 5 we call pancha indriya, pancha bala. And they have similar contents. So saddha, virya, sati, samadhi, panya. So the first one is saddha. It can be power, it can be your faculty. And when you talk about Dhamma, if you don't have faith, I don't think you can follow anybody. And faith is loose translation of saddha. The better term is confidence. So if you don't have confidence in any teacher or any teaching, I don't think you can go far. Even in scientists, they should have some confidence in those tools. Scientists use research design, they use research analysis. If they don't trust them, I doubt that they can go a long way. And I have some students I teach, and I have some friends who were in my classes. They sometimes show that little confidence in science. They might say, it's just a bunch of numbers. When you give them statistics, people die, 5 million people died or suffer from opioid addiction, and there are like 90,000 people hospitalized every year because of overdose painkiller. And when you give those numbers, it's just a bunch of numbers. Now, to me, that's a lack of confidence, and you cannot become a scientist if you don't have that confidence in those numbers or those approach. And same with teaching. If you don't have confidence in the teacher or teacher's approach, it's hard to go in that journey. So the first part is you need to have that confidence, and confidence does not mean, there's another part called bhakti. Bhakti is faith. It's a blind faith. You follow somebody or someone's teacher because you were inspired by the teacher or teaching. You have no clue what actually happens, but you just follow the person without questioning. Now, Buddha is never that kind of teacher. Buddha always wanted to tell, don't follow me just because I tell you this. You must try. That's the quality of Dhamma. Bodhipakkhiya, you must come yourself and experiment. To me, my enlightenment is done. For you, you have your own path to go. Just like giving you direction does not make you take you to riverside. So confidence is very important tool. It can become power, and it can become your faculty. When he says faculty, that's the ground for other qualities. That's the saddha. Virya, we talked, that's the effort. That could be your faculty, that could be your strength. And saddha, virya, sati, mindfulness. That could be your faculty, foundation for other practices, and it could be power. Just like we talked about 4 foundation of mindfulness. And samadhi is concentration. It could be faculty, it could be power. And concentration is a little different from insight meditation. That's another way to look at. When your mind is too weak, when you're not good in focusing on one object or one task, concentration meditation helps a lot, because there you block all other distraction, try to stay with the same object for the longest time. And as you do that, it becomes deeper, and that leads to some joy and tranquility. So that's 4th faculty and power. And the last one is panya. As you cultivate your mind deeper, panya means wisdom. Now, wisdom has to do with your knowledge of impermanence. And this knowledge is not just like knowing what impermanence is, it is experiencing what impermanence is. Now, if you guys have meditated and observed your pain, at least for maybe a few minutes, you might have noticed that now I already feel pain in my back. You're sitting in the same posture, definitely gives some ache. Now, if I can observe that ache without bringing any thought of hatred or any thought about removing it, and just being very equanimous, like so middle, you don't cling, you don't hate, and you try to observe that pain and see what happens to that pain. Now, typically, pain is, unless you have chronic pain, if you are experiencing back pain while you're sitting, that pain is extremely ephemeral. It does not last even a minute. What happens is it constantly changes the location of pain. Either it moves from certain spot at least few inches away or few millimeter away from that spot, or it starts expanding in that area. You might find that pain is suddenly reduced in that location, or it just like goes away. If you observe back, it's not there anymore. So now this explanation is still knowledge. Wisdom has to do with you experience the change of pain, pleasure in your mind with your body. So that is called wisdom, the knowledge of impermanence. It comes from trying, and when you have that knowledge is almost not gonna leave you. Once you learn that, oh, pain was there and I can observe it, I can watch it changing from having there to totally diminishing, that knowledge is called wisdom. It's not just knowledge from textbook, it's from your experience. And that's the fifth power and fifth faculty. And those are two categories of 5. And the third one, it repeats again all those seven factors. That is sati, virya, dhamma vichaya. Now, the one thing that we didn't talk is dhamma vichaya, your interest in dhamma. So that's called the third one, dhamma vichaya, and virya, and that's again the effort. And the fourth one is piti passaddhi. Now, anytime you meditate, the joy you experience, your mind is free from attachment. Other than you experiencing some good dish, or going to a nice place, watching a movie, it gives you pleasure, but it has some sort of attachment to it. But meditation, when you practice, that joy is free from attachment. That's called piti. And passaddhi is, it calms your mind. Now, other joy excites your mind. It makes you needing more. But passaddhi is, it calms your mind. And that leads to sati and upekkha. That's where you learn to be neutral with the experience. And that's the category of 7. And the last one is Eightfold Path. Eightfold Path, I'm sure you guys have heard about it and learned about it. That's a chain of practice. You cannot remove one path. I don't like right understanding, I just want to practice right mindfulness. That does not work. And that's my effort in my practice as a psychology student. In psychotherapy, they have used mindfulness as a part of treatment. If somebody is depressed, they try to use mindfulness, help them to develop present moment awareness, which works to a certain extent. But my criticism is that if you use only one part of that Eightfold Path, which is the middle path, you're ignoring other 7. Now, just like I've been reading a lot about these drugs because I'm teaching drug class, anytime you extract one chemical from the drug, that's like one recent example is you take opium, it's a poppy flower, you extract morphine or codeine. That morphine is extremely powerful, and that does not have other remedy which can take care of side effects. And when you use morphine to make heroin, now that's like double powerful. And you use heroin to make other OxyContin or any kind of fentanyl drugs, those are 100 times powerful. What happened in that extraction process is you lost the original value. If you were to take opium and treat the patient, they might not develop addiction. They might not develop any side effects like constipation or nausea. Because you extracted only the essence that you needed, you lost other qualities. I don't know if I'm making sense. You're losing other important component of that medicine. And same with this Eightfold Path. You just take one and ignore the rest. Yes, it works, but you will again hit this another like a dead end. Okay, this is not working anymore. Why? Because you're missing other component. So Eightfold Path is a one chain. You cannot lose one nut. They should be kept together. And if you were to keep it together, the idea is how to practice moderation. how to practice moderation in every part, how you talk, how you behave, and how you think. And this practice of moderation is middle path, and that's the term, middle path. And I see a lot in my practice as psychology student and teacher. All these extremes lead to some kind of psychological suffering. And you think too much about the past, you're depressed. You think too much about the future, you're anxious. The balance is, can you stay with your present? And that's where this middle path comes in. And that's the category of 8. I know there's a lot, but my plan is, if I come back here again, and I think I'm coming back again, I can talk about each category, and hopefully when you know these 37 factors of enlightenment, and you take a textbook of the Buddha, you read a sutta, you will realize, oh, this is one part of those 37, and it gives you direction how to navigate in the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you.
We'll have questions during tea.